Bank robbery on a clear day with the help of an employee of Aryan Bank and one of the heads of the police department. This is the case of interest, that in late June 2010, a power of attorney was issued for the withdrawal of my grandmother's 2 accounts in the Aryan Bank branch, but she had a total of 4 accounts there. Her daughter, Sigridur Bentein's daughter, Lilla, was the holder of the power of attorney. Witnesses to this were her husband, Friðbjörn Bjarnason, who was convicted of forgery a few years before and was imprisoned for it. Also present was a young woman, Gudridur Arnardóttir, who lived in Akranes, the same town where the couple had always lived. There's nothing to blame for knowing people or living in the same town, but at the same time she worked at Aryan Bank in Mosfellsberg. She was the cashier for all the big withdrawal transactions during that period, transactions amounting to millions, at least 11 million kroner, that were withdrawn from the other 2 accounts the old woman had, which the agency did not cover. In other words, these people robbed the bank with conscious or unconscious help from a bank employee because she, as a witness to the signatures on the POA document, was supposed to know upfront which accounts could be handled and which could not. This bank robbery in broad daylight is just part of the mudslinging that takes place in this case, and it has been characterized by acrimony and arguments since the daughter-in-law of the couple and head of department at the police, Rannveig Thorisdóttir, got involved. After the day of my grandmother's death, my father came to Iceland to attend her funeral. When it was all over, it turned out that the deceased's estate was completely propertyless, but there should have been an apartment at Austjabrún and considerable savings that the old woman had dutifully accumulated for decades, something up to 20 million in cash. It was clear that all possessions and money had been cleared from the estate, apparently without the old woman's knowledge. The case was then taken to the police, and my father was in contact with them. As a former chief of the police, he should be aware of internal rules and regulations. He communicated with Gylfa Dyrmundsson, and the communication was smooth and polite until Gylfi had asked the aforementioned Rannveig, the head of the police department, to give an opinion on this matter. Rannveig is a witness on some papers, which she even admits in the hearings that she did not see her grandmother write on. It is an offense to do such a thing. But keep in mind that she is, of course, the heir to what Lilla and Bjössi leave behind when they die through the couple's son. The police investigation suddenly became very heavy in the whole process, and Lilla, Sigridur, and Bjössi, Friðbjörn, were not brought in for questioning until very recently. The case was brought to the police around the end of 2013-2014, but Lilla and Bjössi were not taken in for questioning until late 2016, after the case had been left unmoved for over a year without any interference with it. First, very early for hearing, 2014, Rannveig Thorisdóttir, Tengdadóttir, head of department at the police. Late for questioning, 2016, Sigridur Bentein's daughter, Friðbjörn Bjarnason, defendants. It is very special that defendants can just read all the accounts and appeals that are discussed before they themselves are heard. It was reported by Gylfa Dyrmundsson that the police in Akranes absolutely refused to interfere with the couple because they were not at all sleazy, and that they absolutely refused to take a report from them. There were barriers in at least 2 places. GCE, a lawyer on our behalf, requested data on the case in the spring of 2016 from the police. The police stated to GSE that there were no files to issue and sent an email for confirmation, which was, of course, a lie and just an obstruction. Another thing became clear when we finally got the data. There was a lot to check, and we didn't get a proper view of the case at that time, as our lawyer didn't get access to the case documents. Gustav, Grandma Gudbjargar's lawyer and guardian of her estate, is old and very behind when it comes to technology. He had no computer, no mobile phone, and no car, and traveled all his way by bus. He could only be reached between 9:08 and 10:00 in the morning via landline to the office. He had very little energy and not much going on. When Jesse contacted Gustav in the spring of 2016, Gustav reacted the worst and held the case hostage in exchange for a settlement of the case, which he then said was 2 million. He demanded 2 million, and he was Gudbjargar's trustee and was supposed to make sure that everything went to the right place. He messed it up. Still, he wanted 2 million to drop the case to lawyers who could be reached and who have modern communication methods and are more likely to succeed. But no, Gustav stood in the way of that, and we will possibly submit a formal complaint to the Icelandic Bar Association. In any case, he has to explain himself. It's worth noting that we got the papers ourselves after the police dropped the case. This case is so unlikely that half would be enough. The old woman's apartment was escaped, before she died, with forged papers and fraud. It is quite clear in our minds that it is. The reason I'm putting this out in public like this, with the names of the people involved, is because whatever we've done to get this issue right, it's always stalled for a longer or shorter time, despite the data that is clear. But most recently, we talked to the sheriff of the Western region, and the case is currently being examined there. We have all the papers, reports, and summaries at hand, copies of a powers of attorney, etc. Aryan Bank's regulator has been informed of this case, and he agreed that all is not well and advised us to get the estate reopened so that these actions could be opened on behalf of the estate. A sheriff in the West is thinking about it, even though the matter is quite clear as far as the opening of the mortuary is concerned. It has taken him 2 to 3 months to think about the matter, and one has become quite pessimistic that the legal system just works over the head. We encourage those who wish to discuss the matter to get in touch, and we are ready to reveal it all, with the hope of disclosure and resolution of this case one day, but it has now been under the sleeping eyes of the sheriff for the 3rd month. If the estate cannot be opened, they get away with a bank robbery in broad daylight with regular returns to drain all the accounts. Relatives of the deceased. Second part. On February 6, 2017, the state prosecutor rejected the police's request to drop the case. The rejection was based on unanswered points. For example, large unexplained withdrawals. 2 of them, one for 5.5 million and the other for 4.7 million, from an account that was not authorized, and one account that was authorized but where 2 million were withdrawn in one payment. The only witness who is not mentioned anywhere is a Gudridur Arnadóttir, who attested to the power of attorney covering the 2 accounts the old woman had. But she was also the treasurer in all the big withdrawals, also in this one that the prosecutor wanted more clarification on. The case is sent back to the police, who summons the defendant for questioning 3 months and 5 days after the refusal. 2 call for questioning? There was nonsense about everything possible that had nothing to do with the essence of the matter. And he got to go. In December of the same year, the police applied for cancellation, and on December 18, 2017, the investigation was stopped. The prosecutor never asked for answers to the questions he had when he refused the cancellation the first time. Why were these questions asked if they were not to be answered? And people think that the legislature and the judiciary work as they should. I allow myself to doubt if it is possible to make an elderly person broke and homeless just before death without knowing anything about it, and people get away with it, even though evidence is everywhere and the case is put in the hands of authorities.